You're listening to the Hawke Media Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives crush the digital marketing game. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
So you're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Rachel Zoe. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Always like to kick it off. So if we go back to preschool, kindergarten, were you like the most fashionable person on the playground? Like where did it all start? Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Okay. So I grew up in a town called Short Hills in New Jersey, which, I tell people from here, I now live in Brentwood, and everyone's like, what's Short Hills? I'm like, it's literally Brentwood in New Jersey. It's the exact same place on the East Coast. And, sometimes I go to some of the places here, like a restaurant or the Country Mart, and I'm literally like, I'm having deja vu to where I grew up. So it's probably why I ended up living here, because I was kind of craving that.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a town called Short Hills, very suburban life. And then I went to school. Was I the most fashionable? The answer is I loved fashion from honestly, as long as I can remember. And my mother always says, like, she has two daughters, couldn't be more different. Literally, if we both dove into her closet, my sister would organize it and I would take everything. So she's like, I don't know, you were made the same way, you came into the world the same way, but like, you just can't, everyone's so different. So,
and was your mom or into fashion, or got it.
My mom is, she's very glamorous. I'm pretty sure I never saw my mother leave the house without lipstick, and still don't.
Yeah.
Oh God, sorry, my son. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
yes, honey.
Bound to happen. It's all good.
I warned you. Okay. Yeah. So, anyway, I definitely love fashion. My mother is very glamorous. And, I definitely did not dress like everybody else. I didn't, I didn't really want to, and I didn't feel the need to. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to be different, and I was always overdressed no matter what. For as long as I can remember. And I really remember it in my like junior high and high school years. I remember just being more dressed up and always being in heels when everyone was in sneakers. And, I remember traveling on the West Coast with a group of teens called a teen tour.
Yeah.
And I remember like climbing the Grand Tetons, and I was wearing heels, and everybody was like, you can't do that, you're going to kill yourself. I'm like, I got this, I'm good. And it just didn't feel right to me to not wear them. So it's that's the thing I always kind of explain is I don't really, it's not for anybody. This is who I am, and when I'm literally sitting at home and seeing nobody for the last 10 months, I'll throw on like a, fur vest and a cashmere dress and makeup, just because it's like makes you feel human, But anyway, so long story short, went to George Washington University.
Mm-hmm. What'd you study?
Sociology and psychology.
Nice.
One would argue I use it every day of my life.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I do, in work, in life, with my kids. It's really, really come in handy, I have to say.
Yeah, understanding how people tick, or what makes people tick, is huge.
That's exactly. And that was my real obsession and passion. And I really thought that's what I would do with my life, to be honest, because I was so fascinated by people and their minds and how they think and what makes them go. Yeah. So when I left for college, my parents moved to the city. They're New Yorkers.
Uh-huh.
So I think once my sister and I left, they moved. And I'm pretty sure I never went back to New Jersey after that. And then lived in the city after. Okay, so trying to figure out how.
I'm curious, yeah. How did you choose that degree? Like, what drew you to it originally? Was it because you wanted to know why people took?
Yeah, I loved psychology. I mean, I got straight A's in my major. You know, I was so fascinated by it. Like, it just is so. When you learn, like, it's weird. I actually recommend to everybody that they take psychology,
Yep.
like, it deeper than is required, because I think it really does. It just, you know, and maybe it's because I have a fascination with people and their minds, but I think what I knew was that I didn't want to have a job that was a straight corporate 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I knew that was not for me. I knew that I had to be moving, changing my environment, being with different people. That was something that really mattered to me. And I hate to say it like this because it makes me sound like I'm 80, but like, in those days, you know, it wasn't like it is now, you know, where you have 10 internships before you even start working, or you know what you want to do at the age of 13. It really wasn't like that for me. I think, listen, I think if you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or, you know, something like that, then yes, you knew like what you were doing, what, you know, how far you were going in school and things like that. But for me, you know, very admittedly, I didn't love being a student. So the reason I didn't ultimately become a psychiatrist or psychologist was because it really required more school after college. Yep. And I say that very honestly because, you know, I always say, like, I'm pretty sure that if someone offered me in my senior year of high school and said, hey, you can go off and start your career now, or you can go to college for 4 years, I would have 100% gone to work. Yeah. I wanted to work from a very young age. I was very ready to go and do and be and make my own money. And
did you, like, when you were young, did you have like either little hustles or jobs or? Yeah,
I got a job at the Short Hills Mall, very fancy mall, working at 9 West shoes. And I would always win like best salesperson because I loved it. I loved making my own money. I loved not having to ask for money. Yep. You know, and that was really appealing to me, honestly, like an independence. And, you know, it was weird. Like, I went to school, and I always say that for me, college served as growing up. You know, I really became independent and knew how to take care of myself. Yep. And so I really think college, if for nothing else, if people don't take away like, oh, I'm going to apply this knowledge, which you do, but if you don't, you grow up. You know?
I would say, I went to school for business management. I learned a little bit, but it's exactly what I say about college is at 18, 17 is when I went to college. I was not ready for anything. By 21, when I graduated, like, I was ready for the real world. Like, it gave me time to grow up and have fun and, you know, spread my wings a little bit.
Totally. And I really, and that's the thing. And in hindsight, it's like, but I would say that if I knew what I knew, like if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have gone to fashion school. Mm-hmm. You know, I would have gone to, you know, St. Martin's or FIT or Parsons and, you know, but I didn't, honestly, I had no idea. And I was not an over planner that way. I really wasn't. I just kind of like, you know, for me, it's always been wanting to be great at whatever I was doing in that moment. Yeah. I definitely had that as my drive. Mm-hmm. What that was going to be, you know, I didn't know.
And were your parents super supportive of it? Is that kind of where the confidence came from of like, it's okay?
Yeah. My parents, you know, they're amazing when I think about it, like as a parent, and I say this to them all the time, like, on how you did it. Like, I didn't get into trouble, you know, I never got into like drugs or anything like that. And, you know, I think the fear, they somehow managed to parent my sister and I in a way that they instilled enough fear that we respected them and didn't want to disappoint them. Yep. And that, you know, Roger and I, my husband, we always talk about, you know, we had this like healthy fear of disappointing our parents. that immediately made you respect them. Because for me, the thought of my parents being sort of disappointed or angry or letting them down or whatever, that look in their face was just the worst, it was the worst. And so I think, as a parent, that's kind of the goal. You want to teach your children these morals and give them this code to live by. And, I always say I parent really hard. I do really hard. Because I think kids need someone to keep them like this. And if they start to go like this, you got to redirect. If they go like this, you got to redirect. And if you take your eye off the ball, that's where trouble begins, Yep.
That's totally fair. It makes a lot of sense. So, okay. So you get out of college, you move back to the city, you said?
I moved to the city. I met Roger in college.
Nice.
So to go back to did I get a job? So I actually told my parents one summer going into my sophomore year, I said, I really wanted to meet people outside of school and I wanted to work and make some money. So I got a job as a hostess at a restaurant in DC in the harbor. And Roger was working as a waiter. I was the hostess, and I was, as he says, I was the hostess in like the very fancy part of the restaurant. And then the casual part was where he was a waiter. And he used to say to me, give me all the good tables. And I said, how do I know the good tables? He goes, if you see people come in with a cell phone, it means they have money and they're going to tip well. I was like, great. So that's how we met. And long story short, like a month later, we were, in love and together, and and he got his MBA. He stayed and got his MBA there. And
at GW or where?
At GW. He did undergrad and grad. He's old. He's 3 years older than me.
Okay.
So, so he stayed while I finished undergrad, and then we moved to the city and we lived together in the city. And the rest is kind of history, meaning I lived there for, almost 10 years, I want to say. Yeah, 10 years. And then we lived in the city, and he was an investment banker. Yep. It was like the New York kind of like, I was a fashion editor and he was an investment banker.
And how'd you get into that? Like, I'm curious the path.
Okay. So this was interesting because everybody was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I graduated college. I was like, I have no idea. I literally had no idea.
I think it's really common. I think it's good for a lot of people to know, like, that's normal. Like, so many people they see the few people that have it all figured out and they're just like, what am I doing?
Yes. And I think now I would say it's less common now, way less common. Like let's put it this way. The young people that I meet now by their freshman, sophomore year of college, they're like, this is my plan. I want to work for you. And then I want to blah, 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 and blah, 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 and I'm like, wow, and so it's definitely a very different time now, an opportunity and highly competitive. And I think in those days, I literally knew what I didn't want to do. As I said earlier, I just didn't want to be at a desk with the same people every day. I just knew it wasn't for me. The same way it wasn't for my dad, but it was for his brother. And it wasn't for me, but it was for my sister. You just know about yourself, right? Who you are. And I was very clear on that, but I didn't know what that meant. And I got a job literally through a friend, like a family friend's daughter's sister. She said, oh, well, she works at this magazine. She's a model editor at this magazine called YM. I'm like, what's a model editor? No idea. And then I went in and interviewed for the job as a fashion editor, not actually knowing what that meant.
Yep.
And I got the job. And I got the job working 3 days a week, $75 a day. But I ended up working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, because I was obsessed with it. I called my dad and said I'd do it for free for the rest of my life. And I couldn't imagine ever doing anything else.
And so what did the job entail? Like, how'd you ramp up with no background in it?
It was like, listen, at the time, having graduated college and having like a good GPA and a good degree and all these things, that was not sort of the norm in fashion at the time, so I think that might have been somewhat appealing.
Yep.
And I just went head first. Like, I just was like, because it was really using, like, I guess my taste level, sort of just using all of these things, but also like just getting my hands dirty. Like I was just in that fashion closet. I was packing trunks. I was doing 50-page expense reports with receipts and glue and tape. And it wasn't, so much of it was not chic or glamorous, but I didn't care. That was the thing. And I think that's the beauty of like being young. You don't care.
Yep.
It's like, okay, let me rephrase that. Back then, people didn't care.
Yeah.
I think now it's a different conversation. There's a lot more that people expect when they graduate college. And it's definitely an entitlement. And I think, I'm not saying everybody, but from what I have seen, it's just a totally different thing. But when
it comes from, everyone has a highlight reel. So they see what they're, the friends they aspire to be the most are all getting this. So why shouldn't they? And it's like, I think entitlement is actually okay in some ways, but I think that it's the expectation that that's the whole job. As you just said, like you're on shoots and all that, which is amazing, but you're also dealing with 50-page expense reports. People forget that there's another side to the job.
Yes. And doing all because it's like for me, I feel like that helped shape who I became. It's almost like you have to do the dirty work first.
Yeah, exactly. You have to grind a little bit. So
because that's what kind of like makes you resilient. And, and I think now there's just this expectation to go from like here to here.
Yeah.
In like 6 months,
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, there is a huge gray area between that and like ambition.
Exactly.
And I love ambition.
Agreed.
I love when people are ambitious, and I can spot the stars within 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yep.
No, they show up, they're ready to go, and they work hard. But, and it's, I guess, now that you're a business owner, I am too. It's our job to also reward that, because you can lose those people very quickly.
Yes. 100. You got to listen, when you find people you love and the stars, you got to hold on for dear life.
Totally agree. All right. So you become a fashion editor, and did you have like guidance while you're there? You have a really good boss or someone that was go do it.
The answer is I did have one good boss who really taught me a lot. And in fact, she mentored me, and she actually is the reason that I went freelance, because she actually started to hire me outside of work, like on weekends and stuff.
Nice.
And I made more money in like one job than I was making in like a year. And so I worked at the magazine for like 3.5 years. I went from fashion assistant to senior fashion editor. And the only step above that is fashion director. And unless my boss got fired, I was never getting that job.
Yeah.
And so at the time, there was very few jobs in the industry in what I was doing. And I knew that the people that like my peers at the other magazines were never leaving. They were the most coveted jobs in the entire industry.
Yeah.
And so there was lines of hundreds that wanted these jobs. And so I just kind of felt like, oh, what do I do next?
Yeah.
And after doing a couple of freelance jobs, I was like, this is awesome. Like not just the money, but the creativity and sort of being able to kind of like run your show there. Like it was incredible, to be a part of these huge visions. And so one of my very first jobs was working on like Britney Spears videos, and, really pivotal ones. And, you stepped away like never more tired and numb in your entire life, because when I was styling music videos, I mean, these hours, we would shoot like night shoots for 5 nights. These were unlimited budgets, but you were working literally like around the clock in the worst, most dangerous neighborhoods. Like it was the craziest thing, but they ended up being these like music videos were like movies, we had like Francis Lawrence and Joseph Kahn and, just some incredible directors. But anyway, so I went freelance at 25. I just closed my eyes, jumped. Everyone's like, do you have your first job? I'm like, no. but I'm hoping I can get one. And thankfully I'd made enough relationships with publicists and managers that it ended up just being word of mouth, where I basically from that point pretty much didn't have a day off for like a full decade. And I started working in the music industry for a full like 5 years. I was simultaneously working in fashion and styling for like different like European fashion magazines and, contributing to styling covers for Harper's Bazaar. Like I was really in fashion, which I lived for, but I wasn't making a lot of money doing that. So styling in the music industry was on fire.
Right.
And the money that was being put.
What is this, like early 2000s?
Yep. It was late 90s, early 2000s. Yep. I worked on Backstreet Boys for many years during Millennium, and with Britney and with Jessica Simpson and Enrique Iglesias for 7 years. I mean, it just went on. And, I lived for it. It was the most insane work ever. Like I can't ever really explain it. And I'm so glad I'm like live to tell about it. But it's, it was an experience that I could never really describe, but it was extraordinary and grueling and exhausting, but amazing. And, I would like fly to Monaco for less than 24 hours for the World Music Awards. I would fly with the Backstreet Boys for 2 weeks and then have a reshoot and then a music video. And then I'd need like 50 looks for them for an album cover, but wait, then they're going on tour. Then they have another appearance, it's like, it was completely insane. And I had like one assistant, but I was making an insane amount of money. I was very young and, and it was pretty amazing to be able to work with like heads of record labels, and they would call me and be like, I have this new artist and I want to create this. And what do you think for, so that was like that was a really extraordinary moment. When I look back at it now, I'm like, wow, what a privilege and honor that was, despite the fact that it was insane.
I was gonna say, I would love to know like something you can share, but I'm sure you have so many crazy stories from traveling around with these people. Anything that stands out?
They really became my friends. We really became family. And I would say that as a stylist and, similar to hair and makeup, it is such an intimate relationship. I'm standing there with, these people without clothes on 90% of the time. So you get real close, and there's a real trust that has to be there as a stylist. And we shared a lot of things. I ended up, in all honesty, like Roger was like, you're a therapist. Like you end up you take on the role of, sister, mother, friend, girlfriend. I mean, not really, but, like I would give girlfriend advice. I'd give like, relationship advice. And yes, there's not a lot of stories I can share with you.
No worries.
Someday I'll write an anonymous book with no names on it. But the truth is that, it definitely shaped who I became, because I felt like there was nothing I couldn't handle if it was thrown at me. And, then I started to dabble in working with Hollywood and actors. Tommy Hilfiger gave me my first sort of break in that when I was 25. And, he really took a chance on me. And he was like, I have this huge ad campaign that's styling 1 week in Austin and 1 week in LA. I'm recreating the White House. I'm using all these young actors. I'm using all these supermodels, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I looked at him. I remember standing in his office, like, like sort of like, what? And he was like, I know you can do it. And I was like, okay. Like,
and I'm curious, so how did that open? Like,
I knew his brother. I knew Tommy's brother, Andy. Who was working at the time doing like Tommy jeans and sort of a bit of a younger line for like J-Lo and, working a lot with young Hollywood. And so I became really friendly with Andy, and I met Tommy through Andy, and Tommy was just so extraordinary. He's such a visionary, and he's so smart. Tommy is so smart, and he's very kind, but he really, I would say one of Tommy's biggest, honestly, one of his best gifts, I would say, is finding talent when you don't even know. Like he said this to me, and I'm like, what? When you're 25, you have no confidence in yourself. I don't even know if I have it now. You just, it's like, what? And then I remember having panic attacks every night of that shoot, because I was like, if I F this up, I was like, this is the end of me.
Yeah.
I might as well. And, and I will say, like, the feeling when you're freelance and you work for yourself, people, it wasn't as big in those days. And people used to say to me like, oh my God, you can take as many days off as you want. You work for yourself. You can like, da-da. And I was like, you have no one to cover for you.
Yep.
There's no margin for error.
Yep.
I would work when I had the flu. I remember fainting on set once because I had 104 fever and I had to go because who was going to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's pros and cons. But I think ultimately, it worked out. But, I ended up doing the job. Thankfully, it was a huge success and it was, something I'll remember the rest of my life. And, he really gave me my big break. And I think ultimately, that was a life-changing experience. But what it did was it made me want to do that more. And it made me want to shift what I was doing because I was really burnt out from the music industry. And I had spent some time in LA for work, a lot of time in LA. I would come and stay for a month at a time. And I just fell so in love with it. It was always pulling at me, California. I just am much more a California person. And I always knew I wanted to be here, but my family's in New York. So there was this constant, and so I moved out here in 2003.
Yep.
After 9/11, because I think I was already wanting to come. And then when 9/11 happened, I kind of was never the same. I was definitely one of those people that was, some people were more easily able to move on. I was really not able to move on. And I think like where I lived in the West Village and kind of watching it all, I think it just had I think the PTSD was so real.
It's hard to love the city when you've been through that, even though it has a place in a lot of my whole family's from New York too. And it's got a place in everyone's heart. But once you've been through that, it has that undertone for a long time.
100%. So I think, and listen, we had no kids, right? We were married, no kids. And so we were both building our careers and we moved out here in 2003 and I swear we never looked back. And I got a break through a friend that I met who I'm still very close with. She's now a really big manager, but she was a publicist at the time who I met for coffee. And she worked with Jennifer Garner and a couple other actresses. And, she was like, your book is great, da, 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 da. But, it's one of those things you walk away like, that's never going to happen. But she ended up calling me in for a job for the Emmys. And Jen at the time was, at top of her game, crushing it on Alias and getting nominated for everything. And she's still on top of her game. But she ended up her look fell through 3 days before the Emmys. And so Nicole called me and said, hey, I know it's last minute, but would you, be up for this? And I ended up working with Jen and the rest was kind of history. Jen and I got real close and I ended up dressing her for everything. And I couldn't have loved anything more. And then after that came Cameron Diaz and Salma Hayek and Keira Knightley and, and the Kate Hudson. And then, that was really it for me. I found what I loved, I just loved it. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And then I started working with Lindsay Lohan and Nicole Richie and Misha Barton. And, so there's different, different chapters.
And so how long did you built out, got into Hollywood, and were you styling for the award shows and also for sometimes on screen?
Everything. Not film. No, okay, not film. And, I had been asked several times to work on film or television. And the reason I didn't take that on was because I wouldn't have been able to do anything else. It's a completely different business, honestly.
Yeah, it's full-time job at that point, right?
Full-time. And it's a lot of costume design. It's a different, to be honest, it's a different craft. It really is. But you never say never, right?
Yeah, sure. And so I know so what happened from there? Because I know there's a TV show, you ended up with Shoe Dazzle. You ended up so when did you start getting into all the other?
It's so weird. In so many ways, my whole life's a blur. I'm like, and here we are. You're like, nope. Okay. God. Yeah. So I ended up, I'm trying to figure out I did my first book Style A to Zoe in
And what-
2000,
Correct.
2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And that was Style A to Zoe. It was a New York Times bestseller. And
Nice.
that was on my list of things I'll never do because I'm not a huge book reader, let alone did I think I would ever write a book. And to be honest, it's not that I don't love reading. It's that I have no life, like time.
Yeah, that's, by the way, exact same. My book's supposed to come out later this year, and I thankfully had a ghostwriter help me with it, and finally sat down and committed to it because we were all stuck at home. I was like, finally, I have time to do this.
Sure.
But I'm not my business partner is an avid reader, like once a week has another book. And so I was like, good, let me know how this one is. And so he edited it for me. Yeah.
I mean, I very admittedly just, it's a time thing, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So, book. Okay. TV show. So TV show number one on the list of things I'd never do, which was let someone into my life with a camera.
Yeah.
I think having created a career out of being behind the scenes and being really comfortable there.
Yep.
And my father, from when I was, 8 years old, said, you have to be in front of the camera. You have to be in front of the camera. He and it wasn't because he like wanted me to be famous. He just would like say to me, but listen, I'm a daddy's girl. But my dad would say like, you light up the camera, you did it. I'm like, you listen to your dad, right? Dad, I'm not comfortable with that. Nope. Stylist, behind the scenes. And, lo and behold, I got approached to develop a show. And at the time, I think you're a lot younger, but there was a show called Style, Elsa Clinch Style with CNN. Mm-hmm. And I was obsessed with it. And I watched it every Saturday at 10:30. I would watch it. And it was like, honestly, it was like watching, I don't even know what to compare it to. It was like heaven for me. It was like she was sitting there talking to Karl Lagerfeld and John Galliano and Mr. Valentino. And I was just like, oh. So I wanted to do that show. I wanted to do the modern day version of that show. But lo and behold, when the show was picked up by Bravo and, it just morphed into something totally different. Yeah. And we called it the Rachel Zoe Project because that was the title on the call sheet for the first day of shooting. And they were trying to come up with a title and they wouldn't not have my name in it. And so I said, let's just call it the Rachel Zoe Project, because then no matter what the show becomes, the name will make sense.
Yep.
And it did. And it did. 5 years later, 9 months out of the year, we shot that show along with my day job.
You need to keep up with everything else too.
Yeah, everything. Wow. It was insane. It was literally insane. In hindsight, I'm literally like, I can't believe I'm alive. But I am, so that's good.
I am curious. So I know Roger was in banking for a while. At what point did you guys start working together more? Because I'm sure that that's a very taxing job too.
Yes. Working with my husband. Yes. No.
No, I meant the investment banking. It's actually been good working with him.
So Roger, he's got a long trajectory as well, but he was an investment banker while we were in New York. Uh-huh. He then started a business with one of his partners that he was an investment banker with, named Neil Vogel. And they ended up forming Recognition Media.
Mm-hmm. And that's right. Yeah.
And they ended up taking over the Webby Awards and the Telly Awards and all these things. And as you know, the Webby Awards it's like the Oscars of the internet. Yeah. So it's still very big and he's still involved. He's still on board. But so that was something they started and all of these things. And then he came out, we were in LA and basically my job and my career and my brand, all of it was just starting. It was honestly overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I am very clear on what I know and very clear on what I don't know. And I know that I don't know finance and business and, in the traditional sense. I know business from instinct and I know business, like I know what I want to be an advisor on or investor in. And I know how to follow my gut and things like that. But don't show me spreadsheets. Don't ask me to model something. Don't, So Roger basically, we've been together almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I think it was around 2009 that we started working together and we formed the Zoe Report. Roger is a media guy. is a media guy, was a media guy. I think will always be a media guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he really, listen, he was very early to the obsession with the internet and that whole sensation. And, we started the Zoe Report because he felt it was necessary to connect with more people.
And when did the TV show start?
Show started, I want to say 2007.
Okay.
I want to say we launched the Zoe Report in 2009.
Yeah.
We sold the Zoe Report to almost 3 years ago to Russell Digital Group, Brian Goldberg.
Yep.
And it was an incredible thing that we did because we love each other. We're still partners. I'm still involved. I'm still a shareholder.
Yep.
But they're doing an extraordinary job with it. Yep. And the Zoe Report basically was launched to, it started as a newsletter to just connect with my followers and my people that wanted to be styled by me, get advice by me,
Yep.
Basically in that. And then Roger really, that was really him, that wasn't, this was really born out of the need to figure out new ways to connect with my audience, honestly, followers, audience, whatever you want to call them.
And then you got into Shoe Dazzle, was that like 2012?
Probably, maybe before, I think a little before that.
And I guess it was because you already had the Zoe Report, you started already looking at e-commerce and looking at media online. And so that opened that door, I assume.
All around the same time. And we met Brian Lee from Shoe Dazzle, who I love.
Yeah, he's great.
Still friends. He's awesome. It's funny. Like it's really all a blur, but I would say from like 2006 or 7 to around 13 was all the Rachel Zoe project, the Zoe Report, and the like, and everything around it, honestly. And I launched my clothing line in 2011, a month before I gave birth to my first son.
Wow. A little busy.
Literally, there's a picture of me like on the cover of Women's Wear Daily from that time, just before my fashion show. And I had this like tummy and I was like in thigh high boots, standing with models in my clothes just before I was about to show my collection. And I literally was like, I've lost my mind, it's literally lost my mind. But like life just, it happens, and you just have to take it as it comes. And, I've really always been governed by, you cannot overplan your life. You just can't, because at least for me, it really would set me up for failure and that feeling of failure. Because when I meet people that are like, I want to be married by 25 and I want a baby by 28 and I want my second baby at 31. I want to start a company at 30. I want to and I'm like, but you're leaving out the biggest variable, which is life.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree. No, I remember my like goal in college was like, I'm going to own my first piece of real estate by 25. Like that was my goal. And I graduated in 2008 from college when the whole industry collapsed and the whole.
You graduated in 2008.
Yeah.
I'm about to close the screen. We're no longer friends. I don't like you anymore.
Well, so came out and then like, it was one of these things like, well, I remember when 25 hit and I wasn't even close. It was like, I thought I was like failed. Like I had missed something. I wasn't going to be that young success. And like timing and luck and circumstance and I made fun of marketing majors in college and now I run a giant marketing team. It's impossible to have those plans. And I think the people that try to stick with them just end up disappointing themselves and becoming depressed.
1,000%. And that's exactly my point. And I have said this for 20 years. Like everyone's like, oh, what was your strategy? What was your plan? Did you have goals? And I'm like, my goal, and I remember it like it was yesterday, sitting on the floor of my New York apartment with Roger, taping my 50-page expense reports for the Backstreet Boys. Roger was like, I literally said to him, like, I just want to be the best stylist I can be. And I want to do this forever. Yeah. And that was literally like, as far as I saw. Yeah. And I think part of that is that will always be on some level a workaholic. And I think when you're in it that deeply, you don't see what else could or can be in front of you until you get up to see a little bit of light. And you're like, okay, hey, I need to change. I need more. I need to do something else. I need to diversify. I need, or an amazing opportunity presents itself.
Exactly. Yeah. Or sometimes people just 50 years of the same thing and they love it. Like, I think that's cool too.
And I know people like that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like that.
Same.
And, it's not for me. It's not for me.
Yeah, totally. All right. So 2013, you
have a second baby.
Okay. And
I jump right into an Oscar fitting like 8 days later.
Okay. So all through this, you are still full-time stylist with the Shoe Dazzle endorsement and the line and the TV show, I guess the TV show. When did that end?
That ended, I think, right then, 2013, because I was pregnant with Caius. And I just remember being like,
so you're working a ton and then just adding things to it, even though you're already working a ton.
Yes. And I believe I was also an advisor, consultant for a company called Piperlime. Mm-hmm. They were owned by the Gap. And, it's funny, they were so hugely successful. And then I think what happened, I think they were almost too early on in the online platform, shopping platform. Yeah. And they were owned by the Gap, and they had an incredible run of like 7-10 years, and then I think just everyone moved in on e-com, and it just, but it was an amazing experience, and I curated the site for them. So that was another big part of my job at the time, and Shoe Dazzle. And my God.
Yeah, a lot. And so
I'm literally like, oh my God.
And I'm looking back. So I think you left Shoe Dazzle like 2013, 14, right? You stopped working with them, and I know you launched the box in what, 15, 16 was the box of style?
Launched Box of Style in, what are we in? Yeah, I think 2015, because I think it's 5 years, and we just launched Curator around the 5th anniversary. So yeah.
We did the launch for you guys. That's why I'm like, I should know.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We worked with you guys with Tom. What's Tom's last name?
Yeah, Bell Macy.
Yeah, thank you. And funny enough, I actually the first time I met Roger, which now we've talked a bunch, and met your parents, I was sitting at the farm shop in Beverly Hills. Yeah. And I'm sitting behind, and we have a mutual investment. I hear someone talking all about how they're going to copy FabFitFun and build it and and I'm listening, hearing I hear something, because I was in that first round with those guys too.
Can I just pause? Yeah. I love Michael Brakeem and Danny so much.
Same.
They're very dear friends. I love them so much. And let me tell you something. I root for them. I buy it. Whatever Michael says to me, I listen, and I love him. And I don't say that about people typically. Yep. Like there aren't, but Michael's someone I met, and Danny as well. But Michael, I met him, and I remember when I first met him, and I was like, I love him. I love his energy. I just,
he's a very sharp sweetheart. Is kind of the way to put it.
That's exactly correct. And I said to Roger, I was like, I don't feel like this easily, but I just want to hug him. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. He's like, Michael's like, he's just a sweetheart. I call him Mikey, because I don't think I've ever called him Michael.
Yeah, same. Mikey and Danny. That's all.
They're the best.
I met them. So before Hawke, I had a company called Ellie that we actually used to advertise with the Zoe Report a lot. It was an activewear brand. And this is 8 years ago. Yeah. And then I met Danny. I was at Science, the incubator, and I met Danny because he was frankly trying to get Science to advertise with FabFitFun when it was still a newsletter. Yep. And so when they went to pivot to e-commerce, I had sold Ellie and was working on Hawke, and he's like, "You're coming." They both called me and they're like, "We need you to invest in this." I was like, "Guys, I don't invest in startups. I spend enough time on that stuff. I want to invest like way outside the industry." They're like, no, we're not asking. Like, you're writing a check. You just let us know how much you want to. And like everyone that invested, I wish I wrote more.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But I'm so happy to be a part of their journey, and they're a part of ours. And we have such a great relationship. But I bet on them.
Well, that was what was fun, was sitting at lunch listening, thinking it was someone like trying to rip them off. And so I finally leaned back and go, "So how do you know the Brakeems?" And Roger was like, "Oh, I'm married to Rachel Zoe. This is their parents." I'm like, "Oh, got it." And
so it's not a shady asshole trying to like.
Yeah, because and my dad's from LA, and he's told me, he's in real estate, but he's told me stories of like sitting at lunch and someone's talking too loud about something and deals that have gotten ripped off and stuff like that. So I was like,
how crazy is that? And also Roger's so loud, so loud, so loud. So,
good guy. So let's get up to now. So you did, obviously shoe dazzle until 13, you launched Box of Style, let's say 15. Like, what have you been focused on the past few years? You sold the report 3 years ago.
My collection. I mean, I launched Rachels in 2011.
Yeah.
Now over the last 2 years, thankfully pre-COVID, we were already pulling into just direct to consumer.
Nice.
We never had freestanding stores. I didn't really want to.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw where the industry was going.
Mm-hmm.
And so when COVID happened, thankfully we didn't have freestanding stores. So that was that was really helpful for us, and ultimately we will make ShopRachels a sort of marketplace of everything Rachel Zoe. It'll really be like just the world up, because I'm doing so many collaborations and licenses and partnerships. And so basically I just want it to be a destination where you can get like Rachel Zoe eyewear, Rachel Zoe fragrance, Rachel Zoe candles, Rachel Zoe, and that's really the goal. And that's the thing I'm most focused on. And Curator is a huge focus for me. So we turned Box of Style into Curator, which is French for the curator. It's the thing that I've really been hired to do most in my career, is to curate and advise and select and pick favorites and style people. And so we thought this is where the business should go. And we wanted to create a women's lifestyle membership program beyond the box. So you still get your your quarterly curation, of course, but now it unlocks membership benefits where you can go into our membership marketplace shop and literally just shop at huge discounts, like luxury, fashion, beauty, lifestyle items. And then with the collective, which is exclusive partnerships with incredible brands from like health and wellness to home, things like Havenly or Sakara Life. And, we do these incredible, it's basically a membership women's lifestyle platform. And it's awesome. And we have not even scratched the surface. We're only a few months in, and it's been tremendously successful, and, and we're loving it. So, and I'm obsessed with it, and I'm constantly trying to make it bigger and more and better. And
I just talked to Roger about it. Like, your guys' focus on that and what you're building there is awesome. I think that's going to be exciting to watch. Yeah. And so two last questions for you. Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been great to see the trajectory of it. So second to last question, what's next? What do you think you want to do? Like, obviously Curator and building out ShopRachels, but where do you envision this? I know you usually look where, as you said, what's right in front of you, but do you have kind of the next 5 years, what you think's coming?
I think media, not necessarily. I mean, I'm definitely working on a TV, 2 TV concepts. People have wanted, they asked for my old show back, but it can't really be. I mean, it's just different. Life is different.
Yeah.
I don't want a camera in my kid's face all the time, So I think there's some plans to be back on television. There are plans to do something like what we're doing now, which will come soon. I can't say things yet.
Gotcha.
But very exciting there. Also, I have launched my first fragrance, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
We did a small launch on ShopRachels before the holiday, and the full size are being launched first week of February. So that's really exciting. It's 4 cents. Empowered, Instinct, Warrior, and Fearless. So that's very exciting. And I mean, honestly, really continuing to grow Curator, really continuing to do more product, Rachel product in every way, in home and beauty and fashion.
Makes sense. Awesome. And so last question, what would be your advice to someone getting started that looks to you as frankly, I would say idolizes you, or like says, how do I become that? How do I reach the top of my game? What do you think has really gotten you all this way?
You know what Roger always says, and I rarely quote him, he always says the thing that separated me, because it's hard to be objective about yourself.
Yeah.
But he always says that my passion was greater and I worked harder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I never looked at what I was doing as a job, as work. I never looked at the clock. I never did it. I never looked and said, if I do this, I'll make this much money by this time.
Mm-hmm.
My passion drove me, continues to drive me. You know, and honestly, I hate to sound like I'm 80, but it's like the old fashioned way of just working really hard, you know, because ultimately, as I sit and look at my team around me, it's the ones that work harder. Those are the ones that stand out, you know, they do, and they go further, quicker.
Yeah. My business partner loves to say natural talent will get you to about 25 and hard work will outpace it after that.
Billion%. Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think, you know, you want to have the combination of both.
Yep. And the passion, I think what you kind of said was have the passion and go all in. Like that's,
you have to, I'm telling you, that's how you succeed. If you love it, the success comes. I promise.
Yep.
I promise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being on HawkeTalk.
Thank you. It's really good to meet you. Good to talk to you.
You too.
You've been listening to the Hawke Media Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.